Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. Today on the show, the Timberwolves made two additions to the roster over the last few days. We'll talk about which addition could make the biggest impact, how the Wolves are shuffling their two-way contracts, and why. It's all upcoming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Lockdown Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hopefully you've had a fantastic start to your week. Have not had a show since Friday, so hopefully you had a great weekend as well. And that means there's plenty to catch up on today for the Timberwolves because, of course, the timing does not work well with when I do the offseason pods. Apparently, the Wolves could not make a roster move right before I recorded a podcast, but instead it was after doing nothing for a couple of weeks. Anyway, I'll stop complaining about that. Friday show posted, and then not long thereafter, the Timberwolves made the first of a couple of roster moves. At least one of them is official. I think the other one might still be reported, but two-way contracts are being shuffled. We might be saying goodbye to somebody who played in the Summer League team that was on a two-way contract in Jesse Edwards, and a couple of new players added to the organization, and I'm excited to talk about them. One of them in particular, Enrique Freeman. I was a big fan of him in the draft a couple of years ago, so we'll get to him in a minute, but I want to start with Johnny Juzang, the Timberwolves got, who'd previously been with Utah. So we'll start there today. We'll talk about where the roster stands, but a lot about Juzang and a lot about Enrique Freeman on today's show. Some actual new Timberwolves players to talk about. I am pumped. A big thank you before we get to it off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube. I just said Utah Jazz. I'm looking at Johnny Juzang here. Okay. As well as YouTube, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You can also download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV and watch Locked On Wolves there. Of course, you can always follow on X as well at Locked On T Wolves and also at Beecken with two B's, two E's, CKEN. All right. Okay. Now let's talk Johnny Juzang. All right. Johnny Juzang, if you're, and to be clear, when the Wolves signed Johnny Juzang, the initial report, I think it was Shams Charania on early Friday morning, reported that Juzang was signing with the Timberwolves, and it shortly thereafter came out, I think it was Chris Hine at the Star Tribune locally that pointed out that this was not a guaranteed deal for Juzang. This is a camp deal. So think of like what the Wolves did, a version of what they did with PJ Dozier last year. A few years ago with Austin Rivers. Austin Rivers ended up hanging around the whole year. PJ Dozier had different dates where portions of his contract would become guaranteed. So the Wolves ultimately moved on from him last year. There's somebody else that Tim Conley did that with, and I'm blanking on who it was. But similar idea. So now this may just be fully non-guaranteed. That's what this sounds like. It's not Exhibit 10 because he's got a little more NBA experience. So it's like a non-guaranteed deal. My guess is and the Wolves have not announced this, but my guess is there's a date that the Wolves would have to choose to waive him or keep him toward the end of training camp, basically. If he stays on the roster, the contract becomes at least partially guaranteed. I'm inferring this based on this being a not fully guaranteed camp deal. But the Wolves also could and likely will just cut him. I shouldn't say likely. We don't know how this is all going to shake out at this stage, but they could cut him, no strings attached, whatever, after training camp when they finally set the roster, et cetera. But as we'll talk about later, the Wolves still have open roster spots. So clearly Tim Conley is all about keeping this flexibility, which we talked about a lot before, and signing Juzang to a camp deal feels like it's absolutely a no-risk deal for the Wolves. But Johnny Juzang's a functional NBA player, I think is the best way to describe him. And he's still relatively young. He just turned 24 in the spring, so he doesn't turn 25 until next March. He was undrafted, didn't play much the first couple of years for Utah, and then last year for a really bad Jazz team that obviously had no interest in actually winning games, he was actually kind of a bright spot for them. He played in 64 games, started 18 games, averaged 20 minutes a game, averaged 9 points, 3 rebounds, and shot almost 38% from three. And it just, albeit 20 games, the year prior, he was 41.5% from three. So overall for his NBA career, he's over 36% from three-point range. And he really is a 6'7" two guard is what he is. The book on him coming out of UCLA, you may remember he started his career at Kentucky. He played a couple years at UCLA. I think it was his second year in college, first year at UCLA. He had a big run in March Madness. The book on him was this dude can shoot, even though the college 3-point shooting numbers weren't like insane. In fact, I've got it right here. He shot 35% from three in college. So far from insane. 36% as a senior, 35.3% his first year at UCLA overall. Good, not great shooter. Not a very good athlete. Like modest at best athlete. Great size, NBA body. Spotty defensively. Probably could use his length and size a bit more to his advantage, but that combined with the lack of athleticism meant that it was like, okay, he's a functional NBA wing offensively. There's perhaps some upside there if the shooting gets better. But he went undrafted, went to Utah, and then last year was actually pretty good overall for them. You look at that roster and the guys that played and didn't play for the Jazz as they were going about their tanking business. Juzang, I thought, was one of their better players. And I think, those college scouting reports, I think a lot of that holds true. I think he's maybe shown a little bit more offensively than maybe people expected as a pro. Again, 9 points per game isn't insane, but on a bad team, like you look at some of the efficiency numbers, like it's all pretty decent. Again, he's 6'7" in shoes, 6'11" wingspan, really good size. It's the modest athleticism, I think, that really kind of limits what his upside can be. He is a good shooter. And again, 37% at the NBA level. It's a smooth looking jumper. He looks the part when he's shooting. He's really good at as a movement shooter, getting himself open to get catch and shoot opportunities. When he's on the floor, that's really what he's going to do. He's got good range. And again, the NBA body is definitely there. What I don't love about Juzang is for his size, and I know he plays the two, but he doesn't rebound the ball very well. He was a pretty mediocre rebounder in college and at the NBA level. Like, again, if you're going to be 6'7" and you're going to be on the floor, even if you're a 2, you just got to rebound the ball a little bit better. He's got rebound rates for his career, 7.5% at the NBA level. Assist rate's not crazy. Like he's not doing much besides catching and shooting. 2/3 of his shots at the NBA level have come from outside the arc. And again, he's doing it at a 36+% clip, which is good. It's basically league average, maybe actually a little bit below over the course of the last 3 years as the league average continues to tick upwards. So he's a shooter, but if that could continue to improve at his size, that's a valuable skill, a valuable commodity. But again, at his size, if he's not going to rebound better, if he's not going to defend better, he's not a great athlete, the upside's limited. All that to say, because the shooting is so good and because he's an intelligent player, he knows how to get himself open and he competes defensively, I still think he's a decent kind of fringe rotation NBA player. And I absolutely think he's better than a lot of the guys you're going to see league-wide that get these camp deals that are non-guaranteed. I think he is worth a guaranteed contract at the NBA level. He would not be a bad, if he's your 11th guy, you're in pretty good shape. And that could end up happening. In fact, I use 11th, kind of loosely, like, I'm kind of taking out the guys that like he would likely play ahead of a Beranger. He would likely obviously play ahead of like a Rocco Zakarsky, right? You take the full 16, 17 guys when you factor in the two ways. And, he'd be a fringy rotation guy. He'd be a depth piece. He'd be the guy who you get multiple wings that are out due to injury, whatever. Juzang would get an opportunity. And he's shown it at the NBA level. And again, I think what maybe impresses me the most is that he found a way to be a functional and dare I say effective NBA player on a really bad team. And there's surely a reason Utah kept him around the last few years. Will Hardy's a good coach. And Juzang seems to be a heady player, a really smart player, an effective rotation guy. I think that's what this is for Minnesota. It's again raising the floor of the roster. They've got their big swings, right? They've got their superstar Anthony Edwards. They've got their secondary stars in Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert, and to a lesser extent, like say Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels. They've got their role guys. You need to raise the floor of the rest of the roster. And this was the argument I was making, last week, the week before, about what the Wolves are doing with the end of their roster. Like, you can't only bring in guys who are long-term type projects. They've got those too with their draft picks from this year, a pair of 18-year-olds. You've got Rob Dillingham. You've got Leonard Miller. They've got plenty of projects as well. They need more of these solid, like middle of the road NBA players that can raise the floor of your depth in the event of a, I use the term emergency loosely, but in a roster emergency, if you will. Somebody like a Juzang that's a professional NBA player that can give you a plus skill, in this case, hopefully shooting, and size, a little bit of ball handling in the backcourt. He's not going to run your offense, but he can, he could be okay there. That's what this move is. If he ends up sticking around again, it's non-guaranteed, and we'll talk about the roster situation later. But that's what the Wolves are trying to do with Juzang. I want to talk about Enrique Freeman. Timberwolves signed him to a two-way deal. We'll talk about him next. He was one of my favorite players in the draft just last year, actually, in 2024. So we'll talk about Enrique Freeman here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, of course, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or even off of it, you just need the extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Maybe it is on the course. Some are still a thing, especially in Minnesota. Think about the craziest shot you've ever made. Was it a total fluke or maybe it was a well-calculated miracle for you on the green? I don't know, like 5 Hour Energy can help give you the boost to do whatever it is you got to do on the golf course. Golf itself is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the Bev card. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. Again, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. Today, the offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost that you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today at 5hourenergy.com, the number 5hourenergy.com. Promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to get 20% off your order. All right. Let's talk Enrique Freeman. Get in the time machine with me. Rewind 14 months. And Enrique Freeman was one of my favorite prospects in the draft. He ended up going 50th overall to the Indiana Pacers, and they signed him to a two-way deal. He played in like 14 games or so in the G League, 20-plus-ish games in the NBA with the Pacers. I have the exact number. I don't need to guess. 22 games, one start with the Pacers. You may remember him in the Wolves-Pacers game when there was a I can't remember what it was, why the Wolves got to pick. Was it a flagrant foul from somebody who was ejected or something? The Timberwolves got to pick a shooter off the Pacers bench, anybody, to take free throws. Or maybe it was the injury. It was somebody must have gotten hurt on the Pacers, and I'm blanking on the exact situation. But the player and couldn't shoot the free throws. That's what that rule is, right? If the player is injured, can't shoot the free throws, the other team gets to pick anybody on the Pacers in uniform to shoot the free throws. They pick Enrique Freeman, who's not a good free throw shooter. It was cold on the bench in his warmups, came out, knocked down both free throws against the Wolves this year. He was one of my favorite prospects coming out of the University of Akron. And the reason why is he was hands down the best rebounder in the country at the collegiate level the last couple of years. Look at his college stats, best rebound rate, the actual per game numbers. His fifth and final year at Akron, his freshman year, he played just 7 games. Then he played 4 more years there. So a total of 5 seasons. So an old rookie, yes. But his senior year, he 18.6 points per game and nearly 13 rebounds a game. And he started shooting threes. He'd only attempted 6 total threes over his first 4 years of college. He was 20 for 54 his senior year, 37%. I thought he showed something there. And well, a lot of the scoring is what a lot of these guys, these undersized centers at the collegiate level that have a nose for the ball do. It's a lot of putbacks. It's a lot of, just being in the right place at the right time, playing in the dunker spot, getting dump offs. He's better than this, but for Minnesota sports fans, Jordan Murphy with the Gophers. Jordan Murphy obviously never played in the NBA, played Summer League. He played at the Iowa Wolves. He's been playing overseas and had carved himself out a nice career. Very, very, one of the better Gopher players, obviously, the last 20, 25 years. But undersized, really good nose for the ball. Enrique Freeman is, I think, a little bit bigger, certainly a bigger wingspan, and I think a little bit more talented around the rim. And I think he's actually overall a better rebounder still than Jordan Murphy. But that type of a player where he played the undersized as an undersized 5 in college and could do that in the MAC conference. Can't play the 5, obviously, at the NBA level, is going to have to be a 4, but also has added a bit of a shot, a jump shot to his game. And he didn't get the chance to show that. He was 1 of 10 on 3-point shots in 22 games at the NBA level last year. But in the G League, Enrique Freeman, over the course of 14 games in the G League, he shot 36% on 3.5 threes per game. So 17 for 47. So if this is really, even call it 35, 36, 37% that he can knock down from 3, and he's going to be one of the better rebounders on the floor. All the rebound rate stuff looks really good. Limited NBA minutes, it was still solid, not anywhere near what it was in college. The offensive rebounding was outstanding in the limited action he saw in the NBA. But in the G League, really good. Like across the board, good stuff in 14 games in the G League. He profiles as a really intriguing NBA player because he can do a little bit of everything, and he's an outstanding rebounder. And when I say a little, he's not a point forward, right? But he's a smart player. He's an active player. He makes the right play more often than not for both of those reasons. And the block rate in college was insane. It was very good in limited action in the G League. Again, not very good in very limited action at the NBA level last year. Like, for context, he played almost 500 minutes in the G League. Not a lot of minutes. He played just 181 minutes in the NBA. So put a little more stock into the G League numbers and the NBA numbers. And again, in college at a small D1 school, very, very good. So the rebounding is the thing you want to hang your hat on, and the Timberwolves are signing him to a 2-way deal, and the team actually announced it. They haven't officially announced the other roster move they're making, but the Timberwolves did get their qualifying offer to Tristan Newton accepted. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but what that means is they're likely going to waive Jesse Edwards. We'll talk more about that too, but that's the spot that Enrique Freeman is going to take. He's not a center, but he is a big, and he is somebody that's going to go in there and play hard and get rebounds. I think the Wolves are looking at this as there's intriguing upside. And I know that he's old for a second-year guy, right? Like, he just turned 25 at the end of July. He's an old guy for having only played 1 year in the league. I think he's even a little older than Terrence Shannon Jr. But there's some benefits to that, first of all. And second of all, there is still upside because he's clearly still improving after playing at a smaller program, getting limited NBA experience last year. And if the 3-point shot's for real, like, is there some, I mean, those skills are transferable, right? The rebounding is transferable from no matter what level you're playing at. If you could rebound the heck out of the ball in college, you can generally do that in the NBA. And some of the defensive activity numbers as well, the steal rate, the block rate, that should be as well. He's not a crazy athlete, so the steal rate maybe not as much, and the block rate maybe not quite as much, but it shows the nose for the ball, the do stuff ability, as I like to say. The activity level is super important. And again, his stats, 6'8", his physical stats, 6'8", with a 7'2" wingspan. So he's a big dude. And because the activity level is so good and the nose for the ball is so good, there is upside there for Enrique Freeman. So I'm really pumped that Timberwolves signed him. And I don't know, like, there's not likely to be a role for him. Can he play the Luka Garza role from a couple of years ago, which is what I was kind of trying to talk myself into Jesse Edwards doing a couple of weeks ago. We talked about that on the show. I think that role does make more sense for an Enrique Freeman than say a Jesse Edwards, because Jesse Edwards is just going to do what, like a 30% impression of Rudy Gobert, whereas Enrique Freeman is, yes, smaller than Luka Garza, but ultimately a better pound for pound rebounder. And I think can give you a little more in terms of what he's able to do on the offensive glass, what he's able to do defensively, certainly. So think of it as a slightly smaller, but more active and impactful and athletic defensively, and probably more offensive upside. And no, he's not going to be as effective in the post as Luka Garza, but what did that really get the Wolves? Post effectiveness from their fifth big who doesn't play that often. Like, you don't have to run the offense through Enrique Freeman. When Luka Garza was on the floor, if you weren't running the offense through him, like, what was he doing, right? He wasn't a good enough spot-up shooter to really make an impact there. He wasn't a good enough offensive rebound to make a massive impact there, although he did at times. Enrique Freeman can play in the dunker. He can screen and roll. He can do a few more of those things with his size, wingspan, nose for the basketball, offensive rebounding chops than what we saw from Luka Garza. And I think the defensive side and the overall rebounding, and I know Luka Garza is a good rebounder, but those things are positive for Enrique Freeman. It gives him a leg up, to be sure. Okay, I want to break down where the roster stands now in the wake of the Freeman contract, the Juzang signing, how many more spots they have for camp, what the two-way situation looks like, and what the Wolves may end up doing next. We'll do all that here next on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you are also building wealth. The most surprising thing for me when I started using Monarch Money was how much money I spend on food, restaurants, especially takeout / food delivery as well. That's what gets me. I spend way more money on food than I probably should. And, I don't know, maybe food subscriptions. I feel like I have a pretty good handle on that. Monarch Money helped me there too, but perhaps you have some subscriptions, streaming services, or whatever that you don't use as much as you might think you do, or you forget you're spending money on it. Monarch Money can help you isolate that and figure it all out, all in one app. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, let's close by taking a snapshot of the roster as of right now. A reminder, Minnesota only had 13 roster spots filled, still only has 13 roster spots filled with guaranteed contracts. They're allowed to sign 2 more guys. The minimum is 14. So they're going to add at least 1 more to the roster by the start of the regular season. Could it be Johnny Juzang? Yeah, it could be, but it's not yet. If it's reportedly, it is a non-guaranteed deal. Chris Hine, Star Tribune said that. I believe maybe John Krasinski said the same. So 13 guys on guaranteed contracts. 3 guys on 2-way contracts. As of now, it's been reported that there's 4, but there's also reports out there that Jesse Edwards is the odd man out, which would make sense considering the Tristan Newton news that he accepted the qualifying offer just came out. Remember, we talked a few weeks ago about how he's undoubtedly looking for a guaranteed deal from somewhere else. I thought maybe with his strong close to Las Vegas Summer League, this is Tristan Newton, maybe he would get that. He didn't. So he's back as of now. So Tristan Newton, Enrique Freeman, and rookie second-round pick Rocco Zakarsky are your 3 two-way guys right now, which would mean Jesse Edwards would be the odd man out, unless Minnesota's planning to convert him to a full guaranteed deal. Seems unlikely. It's possible. I think it's unlikely. So assuming he's out of the picture, you got 13 guys. You got the 3 two-way guys. That gives you 16, and you've got the non-guaranteed deal for Johnny Juzang. That gives you 17. The Wolves can add up to 21 for training camp. Usually there's 2 or 3 Exhibit 10 guys. A reminder of what Exhibit 10 means. That is a non-guaranteed deal that gives you a guarantee. There's like a minimum guarantee to come to training camp. And then there's a bonus. It's like up to $75,000 bonus. If they stick, assuming they're waived from the NBA team, the Timberwolves, they would then, if they stick with the Iowa Wolves for, I think it's 45 days or 60 days, then they get a $75K bonus. So the way I've always described it, if you listened to the show before, I describe it as a preferred walk-on in college, right? Like, which maybe is less of a thing now than it used to be given NIL and stuff, but I don't know. It's probably still a thing. So like the NBA, the team says, look, you're probably not going to make the team, but we'd love to have you. Or like, think about after the NFL draft when undrafted free agents, right? And which is obviously a thing in the NBA too, but to a lesser extent in the NFL, it's like every team's got a list of guys. They offer 15, 20 undrafted free agent contracts. You offer the guy from, Minnesota State D2 school, 10 grand to sign for camp. You're going to cut him. You offer the undrafted guy from, what did, what's his name from the Gophers get, the quarterback? And I'm completely blanking now. Not Tanner Morgan, the most recent quarterback for the Gophers, Max Brosmer. There we go. Maybe, the Vikings gave him like a 6-figure signing bonus. but like there's some undrafted guys that get like 5K. It's the same idea, right? Like you may or may not make the team. You probably won't. But if you sign this Exhibit 10, you get a bonus if you stick with our G League team because we like you this much. And so the Wolves will undoubtedly sign 2 or 3 of those guys, which leaves 1 or 2 spots for either another guaranteed deal. We've talked about Malcolm Brogdon. We've talked about other bigs, the Precious Achuas, the Chris Bouchers, the guys that are out there that would command a guaranteed deal almost certainly. But I guess as the offseason wears on, maybe not. And then the possibility they just bring in maybe instead of doing that, they bring in 2 more guys on the Juzang deal, the non-guaranteed deal. And then at the end of camp, they could pick 1 or 2 if they wanted to fill the roster of those guys to keep on the full roster, waive the other guys, keep the Exhibit 10 guys in Iowa, whatever that looks like. Reminder, you don't have to fill all 15 spots. You only have to fill 14. So the Wolves have often done that to maintain flexibility in case they want to trade a 1 for 2, bring 2 guys back in a trade, which is what they did last year, and then had too many guys and had to waive Keita Bates-Diop at the end of training camp, among others, because the roster was too full after the Cat for Randle DiVincenzo trade. But if they were to do that again, which they're not going to, but say they decided they wanted to trade Randle and get 2 guys back, they would have that extra roster spot in this scenario. They could also plan to keep it open in case they want to convert multiple non-guaranteed deals or multiple 2-way deals into standard contracts, which again seems unlikely, but it's all about optionality. It's all about flexibility, and Tim Conley is clearly all about that, and that's kind of the thought process here, no doubt. So Minnesota right now has 17 guys, by my count, under contract of some kind for training camp. They have 4 spots. They only have 2 spots for guaranteed contracts, and one of those 2 could be filled by somebody that's currently on the roster, like a Johnny Juzang or a 2-way guy. It's unlikely. It's not going to be Rocco Zikarsky, right? So like it's a limited. Could be Tristan Newton, probably not Enrique Freeman, but you never know. And so we'll just keep an eye on who else they're going to bring in, and I'm sure we'll get some more news here as we go the next few weeks. There's lots of guys out there still that are looking for NBA homes, to be sure. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. That's all I got for you today. We're in the off-season schedule. We're going to do 3 or 4 podcasts a week throughout the month of August and into September. So we will be back tomorrow. We'll have a Wednesday episode this week. I think we'll do Tuesday. We'll do today, Wednesday, and Friday this week. There'll usually be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, but at least 3 podcasts every single week in August and September. And about the time training camp kicks off, we'll go all the way back to 5 shows a week. So a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And of course, this episode, or this show, I should say, a big thank you for making us your first listen. And a reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the fantastic Locked On NBA podcast. There is absolutely no offseason over there. Our guys, Doug, Matt, and Hayes, do an outstanding job keeping you up to date on everything throughout the offseason to help you be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is also part of that very same Locked On Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.